seed variety developers have almost entirely focused on developing GM crops, and as a function of that, it's oft-quoted that in Canada 80-90% of the canola is GM canola. Well, farmers just have, since the adoption of that, they've had no ability to sell their crop as non-GMO. It's just part of the amalgam that takes place, so there's no financial incentive to grow otherwise. And when they've encountered drastically escalating seed prices in recent years as a function of the control of the seed, they can't find other seeds.
So what about market loss then, Arnold? Do you think as Canada experienced a lot of market loss, and could you see, say, Australia, which has been GM-free, us also?
Exactly. When they introduced GM canola in 95-96, they actually had an identity preservation program in place that lasted a couple of years. And when the Japanese market opened up, they basically abandoned that. I'm not talking about the Canadian government, but two companies, Bayer Crop Science and Monsanto, in conjunction with canola growers. So the canola market in Europe was closed to all of Canadian canola, not just again. And Australia picked up that market. And of course they grow a lot of their own canola as well. And I think to this day, I think Australia basically has the bulk of that market.
Do farmers make more money out of GM canola or organic canola?
Well, for one thing, there's no organic canola basically grown in Canada anymore, virtually none, because the seed stocks are so contaminated, as well as the organic canola just is. We've lost that crop, and that's why we took the legal action. Because we had lost canola, we just about lost flax, but thanks to efforts that my colleague and others, they stopped the flax, GMO flax, and actually destroyed the seed stocks. And we were in a position in 2001 of the imminent introduction of GMO wheat, which would have been devastating. We would have probably lost another crop, our two biggest crops.
So the things that we were told, GM canola or GM crops, for example, have better pest resistance, that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, do you save money and make money by growing GM crops or not?
I'd like to address that.
Yeah.
The GM crops, canola crops that we have in Canada have no pest resistance Bt gene in them. They're herbicide tolerant only. So what they have done is they've allowed producers some flexibility in how they grow canola. There's a wider window for them to spray and to control weeds. In terms of profitability, well, since the introduction of GM and canola, we can't attribute it directly to that, but to the general decline in price of farm commodities, which has only recently turned around. Canadian farmers have seen negative net farm incomes. GM canola has not been a magic bullet to pull them out of the financial difficulties they've been in. Indeed, one of the reasons why it's been taken up to a certain extent is so many farmers have left the land that GM canola allows them to farm in a simplified manner, a bit bigger acreage. In terms of costs, they've escalated drastically. The price of seed, now farmers are paying in the neighborhood of $14-15 Australian per hectare for seed. Per kilo of seed. And they're also paying technology access fees, technology use fees that are significant. So, and they've moved into a regime that requires, with these canolas, largely the use of very expensive synthetic fertilizers. Personally, myself, on my own farm, I've stayed outside of that system. I use my own seed. It's very inexpensive. I don't have to pay the technology use fees, and it's actually, for me personally, has been one of my most profitable crops because I chose to stay outside of that entire program. One has to ask the question, who's the beneficiary of this technology, and why is it being pushed so hard? And it's a very profitable vehicle for those who can control the seed through that mechanism. And, you know, one of the key aspects of the contracts that farmers sign up is they are not allowed to save seed, so they're forced into a dependency relationship where they pay the price demanded of them to grow that canola every year on an annual basis. I don't do that.
What about buffer zones, though? I suppose that the pro-GM farmers might be saying that buffer zones do work. Is there a sizable buffer zone that might work and avoid cross-pollination?
Well, maybe 20 kilometers.
It won't work.
It's the farmers that have never grown canola in their lives, on their farms that have never planted canola, are finding volunteer herbicide-tolerant canolas growing in their fields. It's endemic in the countryside. It didn't take very long. I like to use the example of most of the weeds that I, as a farmer, am dealing with on my farm was introduced by contaminated seed lots less than a century ago. By 1917, farmers were dealing with them, brought in from Europe. These weeds have been an ongoing problem. In 4 or 5 years, the introduction of GM canola, it was endemic across the countryside. Once the genie's out of the bottle, you don't pull it back, and you're not going to segregate it. The grain handling systems, the bulk handling systems, rail cars, farm equipment, all of these things have a myriad of little pockets to catch canola seeds. You have winds here like we have in the Canadian prairies. Canola seed blows around. The plants break off when they're ripe. You cut them and windrow them in the field. They blow around. Buffer zones. It's a dream for anyone to imagine that a buffer zone of any size will allow those farmers who do not want